Welcome to the March 2024 meeting of Parsec. Parsec is a 501c3 nonprofit organization promoting science fiction, fantasy, and horror in literature, media, and music for over 30 years. Our mission is to promote awareness of the richness of speculative fiction as literature, art, and music, further general education in the sciences and arts, support contributions both scientific and artistic to society, and to espouse the enjoyment of speculative fiction as literature, art, and music with others.
Guest of honor at this year's Confluence is Richard Kadrey. Richard is the New York Times best-selling author of the Sandman Slim Supernatural Noir series. Sandman Slim was included in Amazon's 100 science fiction and fantasy books to read in a lifetime and is in development as a feature film. The Dead Take the A Train is his latest release. Best-selling authors Cassandra Khaw and Richard Kadrey have teamed up to deliver a dark new story with magic, monsters, and mayhem, perfect for fans of Neil Gaiman and Joe Hill. Some of Kadrey's other books include King Bullet, The Grand Dark, Butcherbird, and The Dead Take the A Train. He's written for film and comics, including Heavy Metal, Lucifer, one of my favorites, Hellblazer. Kadrey also makes music with his band A Demon in Fun City. At Confluence, our featured music guest is going to be Bonnie Gordon. Bonnie Gordon is a voiceover actress, singer, songwriter, and entertainer, not to mention a huge nerd, based in Los Angeles, California. As a voice actress, Bonnie is known for voicing such characters as the ship's computer in Star Trek Prodigy, Rainbow Micah in Street Fighter V, Eva in Code Vein, Biko in Muhe, and Roji's Bureau of Supernatural Investigations, and multiple recording characters on Season 2 of Cartoon Network's Mighty Magiswords. You can read more about Bonnie and see all the great musicians that will be performing during 2024 Confluence at the link that we'll provide in the chat. Our featured artist is Christine Hudson, who I think I saw with us today on Zoom.
Yay, Christine.
Christine has been running her own freelance illustration and graphic art business since 1999. Her clients include corporations, nonprofits, and private art collectors from around the world, and she accepts commissions for illustration, calligraphy, and other graphic design. Her art incorporates materials from the ancient to the very modern, often using handmade paints and inks. The work is all done by hand with no digital media except for the printing process. Christine is creating the artwork Parsec will use for our program book, badges, and t-shirts. Check out her featured artwork and workshops at the art show at Parsec, and you can keep up with the news on all this at confluence-sff.org. Announcement for Write or Die. Write or Die is a Pittsburgh science fiction, fantasy, and horror writing and critique group. Established in 1996, meetings are free to attend and open to the public. In 2024, Word became a part of Parsec Inc.'s programs under the Workshop Committee. Meetings are held on the second and fourth Tuesdays each month. The first Tuesday is Zoom only. The fourth Tuesday is at the Mount Lebanon Library. Here.
Right next door.
Right next door.
It's right
Meeting
next
room
door.
B. And that also has a Zoom component if you can't make it in person. In March, the meeting dates are Word via Zoom on March 12th. That's already passed, but that was 7 to 9 p.m. And coming up, Word at Mount Lebanon Library, including Zoom, on March 26th from 6:45 to 8:45. And you can learn more at the link we will provide to Word in the chat. That's the news. We made it. Okay, let's go into this month's guest and program. Our guest this month is author and guest of honor at this year's Confluence Conference, Richard Kadrey. We'll also be discussing various panel topics for this year's Confluence Conference after we get to meet and learn more from Richard. Richard will introduce us to his works, career, and writing, and do a reading from one of his books. He will also participate in the panel, as I just said, and more information is available at richardkadrey.me. Okay? And Richard, why don't you come up and introduce us to yourself and tell us about your works. We'll see how things go. I'm sure people will have questions. All right. There's that.
I didn't remember I'm supposed to do a reading, so of course I put nothing. But I think I can dig up something on my phone.
Can you have a copy of the book?
It's right in front of
Yeah, I'm not going to read this. It's a more complex prose style than that I find hard to read in public. For something simpler. I'm Richard Kadrey. I'm the co-author. I've shown this a couple of times. I was lucky enough to have 3 books out this year. Dead Take the A Train, a novella that's part of a new series called The Pale House Devil. That's about 2 hitmen who kill the dead and the undead. In fact, one of the hitmen is in fact alive. He only kills the dead. One of the hitmen is dead. He only kills the living. So it's a good combination.
It's a good balance.
Exactly.
So do they try to kill each other?
No, they love each other.
Oh.
No, they're pals. And the 3rd book is my first collection of short stories called The Secrets of Insects. And that's from Subterranean Press. And that was a real thrill to have because even after over 20 years of publishing, I still have kind of an inferiority complex about my stories. I mean, they've been up for awards, things like that. And yet, I think when I started out many years ago, stories were such a struggle for me that when I started getting published, I didn't quite believe it. And it's still one of those things where like, oh, come on, you're kidding. But I've been in a bunch of Ellen Datlow's books, and it's like, that's kind of it's like, I should have learned by now that my stories are okay. But, you know, there was some validation in getting my first collection of stories out. So I feel a little bit better now. But, you know, everybody, it's so easy to have imposter syndrome. You're publishing and you have it, you're not alone. So, you know, feel free to have it, try to work through it. Don't let it stop you from doing anything. That's the trick. Yes.
So if you're writing under a pen name, is it okay to have imposter syndrome?
Absolutely. You can have double imposter syndrome. That's even better. So, always I never know where to start with these things. I've been publishing, my very first short story was in a British science fiction magazine called Interzone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started out writing hardcore cyberpunk. So The Firecatcher was my first story. I hate it. I will never let it be reprinted. Someone wanted to, and I refused. So I let them print another cyberpunk story called Surfing the Kumbu. And I forget what anthology that's in. It's in another cyberpunk collection. It's an early cyberpunk story. So you can find that in a title. The Big Book of Cyberpunk. That's what it is. So yeah, you can find Surfing the Kumbu in there.
See why that was a hard one to remember.
Yeah, really complicated title, man. So I started out, that was my first story. And then again, Ellen Datlow republished it in, anybody remember Omni?
Mhm.
Yeah, it got republished in Omni, and that started my relationship with Ellen Datlow, who's, I think, one of the best editors around.
Absolutely.
In fact, she's given me, I've worked with a ton of editors, book editors, story editors, and Ellen's given me the best notes I think I've ever gotten from anyone. So if you ever have a chance to submit to Ellen at tor.com, jump at it. I mean, I don't, these days, I don't know how you submit to tor.com. I know they've changed their parameters, but if you have something you're really proud of, I'd say send it to them because they're a great market, great editors, and it's a great place to be. And you might end up, if you do a novella for them, you might end up a book. So that's not a bad thing. My first novel was a cyberpunk book called Metrophage, set in a near future LA that ironically is overrun with a awful new disease that no one can figure out. The main character is Johnny Kabbalah, who is an ex-cop and drug dealer in this kind of scuzzy down low story I was telling. You know, I always figured at the time Gibson was writing this really sort of, even his street stuff was very pretty and glossy, you know, like a Dutch movie, which I really appreciated, but I kind of figured I was going to write sort of 2 levels below that. just sort of, I mean, just the punks I hung out with. So the book's a lot dirtier, the book, everything they deal with is a lot more messed up and broken. The technology just doesn't work. It's supposed to be slick, but it just doesn't work. And yeah, I got that push. That was, I think I was one of the last ace
Doubles.
No,
not ace doubles, ace specials.
When Terry Carr was doing it.
Yeah, I think that's what I was the last book Terry Carr edited.
Oh,
So that's kind of, kind of both sad and both a kind of badge of honor there. That's one of those stories. If you ever want to go to a writer's workshop, who's heard of Clarion? All right. I met Harry at the Clarion Writers Workshop. And when I had the book, I just sent him a letter at Ace and said, "Hi, you were my teacher. I don't know if you remember me." And I said, "Sure, here, I remember you." Okay, so I have this book. Will you look at it? And he said, "Yeah." And he bought it. I mean, people ask me how to start selling your work, and it's like, well, meet an editor. And that's another good reason to go to conventions. You will meet editors there. You will meet other writers who will help you with your work. You will meet editors. Just be nice, be polite. Don't be too much of a fan, but just I appreciate what you do.
and never follow him into the restroom.
Never fall. No.
Yeah.
I think I know what you're referring to, but I don't want to think about it too much. So from there, I wrote my second novel. Was an interesting one for me. It's called Kamikaze L'Amour, and it's also a science fiction novel, but I was trying to write kind of a combination of J.G. Ballard and Marquez. I wanted to do science fiction as magical realism. And it was interesting reactions. Some people got it. Some people went, "What is this?" The reviews were interesting. I got a starred review in Publishers Weekly, and Kirkus, and I don't mean they gave me a bad review. They gave me hate. They loathed this book. And it sort of tells you what the world, what publishing can be like.
They were clear about it.
Oh, they did not hold back. They definitely gave their opinion.
Well, at least your books generate feeling.
Yes.
Oh, there was a lot. I got a lot of feeling from Curtis on that. Right now, I have rewritten the book. I've cleaned it up a bit. Took out some dumb stuff, fixed some of the details of the book, and I'm happier with it now. It's an old book that is not, it was a huge commercial failure, like the biggest commercial failure of my life. So I kind of put it out there like, hey, are there any presses that want to reprint this weird rewritten book that no one's ever heard of? And the answer was no.
No.
So it's my later this year in the fall, it's going to be my first attempt at doing a Kickstarter for a book. Because I want it back in print. I hated it for years, and then about a year or two ago, I reread it, and it's like, there's something here. So I kind of fixed it up a bit, and I'm looking forward to this interesting experiment, seeing if I know other people who've had success doing books on Kickstarters, and why not try it? Yes.
I was just going to ask, as you mentioned rewriting it, did you read it with the idea that that's what was going to occur? Or did you read it saying, what is it about this book that I remember that I can't remember until I reread it?
I knew that there was a good core idea in the book. I just didn't know if I got to it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I read it with just thinking, can I stand this book?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I kind of liked it, but there were problems. So I started, the plan then was to take the book and fix it up a bit.
And did you have, I'm not even sure how to ask the question, the idea of the skills that you have now as a writer
Mhm.
versus the skills that you had then?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I knew I could make it better just because it's been a million years. And so, yeah, you can't help but learn.
Mhm.
You know, it's like my old friends, old punk musicians who started off playing very simply. They knew a couple of chords
Mhm.
and they just slammed through them. And then you play for 10 years and it's like, oh my God, I'm good at guitar. Shit. It happened the same thing with the book. It's like, oh my God, I'm better at this now. I have to rewrite the book.
Uh-huh.
So, that will be an interesting experiment. It's also, I think, a case study in never abandoning your old stuff. Never delete stuff. Even stuff you hate, keep a copy. Because you never know in the future when one little part of that terrible story you wrote or that terrible book you wrote will be useful somewhere else. So you want to be able to refer to that terrible, terrible thing you wrote. So never throw away an idea, never throw away a story. I lost the whole I lost the whole manuscript at one point. This is back before I understood multiple backups.
Oh, no.
I had the whole manuscript on one old drive, and one day I heard that great sound where the drive starts grinding.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that was my only drive. I lost everything on it. And this was a long time ago. And I thought, I had a copy of the book. I thought, I'm just going to have to, I tried OCRing it, really, just junk. And I thought, I'm literally going to have to hire a person to retype my book into Word. Luckily, you know the Internet Archive? Remember them? There was kind of a scandal with them a few years ago because they were scanning books and the people got really mad about it. Well, one of the books they scanned was Kamikaze L'Amour. And I met somebody from Internet Archive who said, I'll just give you the scan. And this lost book suddenly appeared in my email.
Nice.
So the formatting is a bit funky, so I'm going to have to have somebody help me fix that stuff up. I can't quite figure it out myself, but I had the book again, and so that was the amazing thing that sort of fell into my lap. So multiple backup drives, multiple drives if you have them. Stick it on Dropbox. Email it to yourself.
Google Docs.
Google Docs. Every single day when I'm finishing work, I'm working on a book project right now. Every day, I email myself to two addresses the whole manuscript.
No.
So I have copies everywhere because I learned I lost. I mean, when you lose a whole book, you get very backup happy. So I have everything. My desk is just. Because I do photography, I do music, I do writing, and I just have backup drives everywhere. So I have physical copies in the house, but then I have all the other places where it's not in-house in case everything burns down.
You mean you don't buy your own books?
God, no. I steal my books. I call up publishers and
It's called search.
yes. So I actually had to buy my own books a couple of times. I mean, Kamikaze L'Amour, when I was trying to get more copies of it, there were some film people who wanted to see it. I had to go buy my own used books. And I was just happy they were there. I have a couple of books that no one knows about that I don't want to talk about that for various weird reasons I've had to buy myself. I had to buy one of my old really obscure books for $100. That hurt.
Yeah.
That really hurt.
No discount for the writer.
No. Probably would have jacked it up more than it was. So that's sort of the early stuff. After Kamikaze L'Amour, I had some just personal problems. I had undiagnosed bipolar depression for years, and I didn't write for a long time after that. It was years. But I finally got help. I finally got pills, and things started getting better for me. And I started trying to write again. But at the time, I looked back at my own work and I had to admit something to myself, that my early work was a lot of it was pastiches of better writers.
Here's on voice.
Sorry?
Somebody might just be talking with their mic open.
Yeah, I couldn't quite understand. But I felt bad about a lot of that early work. So I had enough failures as a writer at that point that I just said, I'm going to write a book. Throw out all my old techniques, throw out all my old ideas, and write this book in my voice. That was what that book was. It's called Butcher Bird. And it was the first book that I wrote in my own voice. It was, of course, it's influence. Every writer is their style. Each book is influenced by somebody. This one, I learned what was wrong with my writing from reading Barry Gifford, who wrote Wild at Heart, the movie the Lynch movie is based on. And he's the one that taught me, and he and Elmore Leonard taught me to let go of my old prose style, which was a pastiche thing I was feeling bad about. So I threw out everything and I wrote Butcher Bird with no publisher, no money, just I have to do this thing to see if I can write in my own voice. And I was happy with the book at the end. I didn't know what it was. There was no urban fantasy at the time that I wrote that book. It didn't exist. And my agent sent it out to a few places. Four editors wanted to buy it. But because there was no urban fantasy at the time, the marketing departments of all four publishers rejected it. And that can happen to you as a writer. Marketing departments, you think your editor runs the show. No, it's the marketing people. I've had a friend with a similar problem this year. She wrote a really interesting fantasy book that no editors liked it, no marketing people. We don't know what to do with this. We don't know what genre it is. So thankfully for her, after casting around for half a year, she found a small publisher for it. But I couldn't find anybody for my book. So I literally made the thing into a PDF and said, here's a free book. Download it, read it online. I don't care. I'm not going to throw this thing away. And about a year later, a publisher read it and approached me, and it turned into a book. I rewrote it a bit. They hit some really good notes, changed the title. And I had the first book of mine. Metrophage was a moderate success, my first book. But this was the first book that I felt was mine and was successful. It got good reviews. It got movie interest, things like that. And it really helped me think that I'm a writer. So from there, I still made no money. I was working a straight job, working my ass off as a writer for a few more years. I mean, I was thrilled to have Butcher Bird out in public. Like I said, I got good reviews. Regular people came up, fans came up to me, things like that. A lot of people enjoyed the book, but I wasn't making any money. And I hit a wall where I said, I'm going to write one more book. If it doesn't do anything, quit. I'll write stories. Maybe I'll write a novella, but I'm not writing books anymore. So I wrote, and I was actually really ruthless about it. I wrote 100 pages and I had a very detailed outline of the rest of the book. And I told my agent, if this doesn't sell, I'm done. And that was Sandman Slim. And it went out, and to my surprise and my agent's surprise, there was a bidding war between 3 publishers. And I got more money from the first Sandman Slim novel that I gotten from everything else I'd ever written combined. So then I had to write the book. And by then, urban fantasy existed. I didn't know it existed. I'll tell you this, there's sometimes being naive can be a really good thing as a writer. I didn't know who Rachel Harrison was. I didn't know who Jim Butcher was. I was just off reading old stuff. I was reading science fiction. I was reading guys like Roger Zelazny. I was reading a lot of old writers. In fact, when when Sandman Slim came out, people did accuse me of ripping off Jim Butcher. And it's like, I don't know who this guy is. I was ripping off Roger Zelazny. So I wrote the book. It got really good reviews. I took a lot of hits for it because I was lucky in that urban fantasy existed, even though I didn't know it existed. So it was the right book at the right place at the right time, even though I didn't know that's what I was doing. I since learned, like they said, oh, you're going to do really well in urban fantasy. And I kind of smelled like, yeah, I guess so. And then I ran out to the bookstore and went, what's urban fantasy? Give me some books. So I wrote that. It got some nice reviews. It made some money. They actually bought 3 books at the time. They bought a trilogy of the books. So they bought what became Sandman Slim. I can't remember the second title, and I can't remember the third title. Oh, Kill the Dead is the second one, and then Aloha from Hell is the third. And if you're a Cramps fan, you'll know where that title comes from. I took a lot of hits with Sandman Slim because even though it was urban fantasy and I fit right in there, I wrote it first person present tense, which at that time was just like writing. I could have written the book in cuneiform. Everyone. Critics didn't mind it. Readers hated it. Just first person present tense back then was just loathed by so many readers. But it's what the book needed. I wrote the book originally third person past tense. I wrote it traditional style, and it just lay there on the page. So I kept changing voices. I kept changing, like maybe this second person, that'd be kind of crazy. Should I, I tried all kinds of stuff. And then the moment I started writing first person present tense in James Stark's voice, the book finally came alive. So I was stuck. I knew what I had to do, even if people didn't like it at the time. But enough people liked it that they were buying the book. And now first person present tense in publishing is not a big deal. In fact, a reader friend of mine is saying that people are starting to write in second person, and that's the big thing right now that everyone's complaining about. Second person's tricky. If you can pull it off, it's amazing. If you can't pull it off, it's a dumb parlor trick.
It's for short work rather than, you think the whole people have done whole novels that way?
Charlie Strasser.
Oh, okay.
People have written really successful second person books.
You have to be careful.
Yeah.
You have to know what you're doing, or you have to be willing to write it, throw it away, and start over.
Really?
I mean, that's what happens with some books. You just have to keep working at it to figure out what the book is, what your relationship to the book is, and how this is going to work for readers. So, a friend of mine is reading for the World Fantasy Awards. There's a ton of second-person stories out there. Good for them. They're the people that readers are going to get mad at now. They're not mad at me anymore. So let the second, let them take the heat for a while. So I wrote the first 3 Sandman Slim novels. They did okay. And then I sold 3 more. So I had 6 book series. And The secret was I had in my brain, I had 2 6-book arcs. And it's like, I don't know if anyone's going to let me write 6 more books. But to their credit, Harper Voyager let me do it. So Sandman Slim started off as one weird little book and turned into 12. That was the complete arc of a man's life. It was James Stark, who becomes Sandman Slim, was a regular guy. He had magical powers. There was a whole subculture of people called the Sub Rosa who had magic, but they were very, very circumspect about it. So really nobody knew about it. James Stark was a punk and a drunk. So he was happy to do magic anywhere the hell he wanted, whenever he wanted. And he was kind of blowing everybody's cover. But because he was just a punk and a street kid, the Sub Rosas kind of left him alone because he wasn't going to go anywhere. He was part of a magical circle. And the head of the circle was a guy named Mason Fane. Mason was about as powerful as James Stark. And so they had a real rival, like Cain and Abel kind of a rivalry. And at one point, Mason got more powerful, tricked Stark, and sent him to hell. And he was in hell for 11 years as a living person, the only living person who'd ever been down there, and was everyone's toy, roundly abused. He was a circus animal, terribly, terribly treated in hell. Until he ended up, they finally got bored with him and just said, throw him in the gladiator pit and let's just let somebody kill him. But he didn't die. And he didn't know why. And it's like, I'm not a fighter. I was just like I said, a drunk and a skeevy little punk in LA. I'm not any kind of fighter, but he didn't die. And he didn't die, and he didn't die. And he got better and better and better at killing. Until one of the Satan's generals kind of plucked him out of there and said, hey, you're pretty good at this stuff. You're my personal hitman now. So he became a hitman in hell, working for this general who was very ambitious. He couldn't do that forever. And when he found out back on Earth that his girlfriend, Alice, had died, and he suspected people of killing her, he just said, I'm done here. He had been given, by the general, he'd been given a key in his chest that let him walk through shadows so that he could go anywhere and no one knew about it. That's how he was such a successful hitman. He used that key, he killed a lot of people, then he used that key to crawl out of hell. And he literally, physically crawled out. Literally coming out in the back of Hollywood Forever Cemetery, which if you've ever been to LA, you'll know that place. It's where all the movie stars are buried. He went on to, his plan was to kill everybody in his magic circle when he got back to LA. The thing was, he spent 11 years in hell. He went down at 19. He came out at 30. He missed a whole chunk of his life. When he got back to Earth, he was a madman. He was clinically insane. All he wanted to do was kill everybody. He didn't care who, he didn't care how. He was looking for revenge on everybody. It's literally to the point of like, you know what? If I can end the world, and he didn't end the world. He didn't get all the revenge he wanted. He got some of the revenge he wanted. But over the course of the 12 books, I didn't want to write a book about a crazy hitman for 12 books. That just seemed like a dumb idea. So what the series is the rehabilitation of a madman. He rejects all human contact, all human connections in the first book, and gradually, much against his will, he starts feeling human again, to the point toward the end of the series, he, in my mind, is rehabilitated. He gets there and he makes a specific sacrifice that he couldn't have done in the first book, because he, as much as he tried to not connect with people, he couldn't help it. He fell in love. They broke up. They got back together. He died again. They broke up. When he got back to Earth, it was like, hey, I'm back. It's like, I got a girlfriend. He went through all the basic hardships you do when you're in your 20s and 30s. And he was, the other thing that messed him up was being gone for those 11 years. He hadn't had a chance to grow up the way a normal person does. He lost 11 years of his life. He was 30 years old, but emotionally, he's still at 19 with that volatile temper and that I'm right and everybody else is wrong attitude. And he had to, as much as he had to rehabilitate being a pure monster, he had to just grow up. He had to just shut up and grow the hell up. And that's what happens over the 12 books. And I wanted to write that, and it's completely not autobiographical. In terms of growing the hell up. And that was a big part of my life for 12 books. Interspersed, I wrote a few other things during that period. I'm not going to tell you about all of them. Some of them I've cast aside. The one book during that period that I really, really liked, that as a game was a commercial failure, was The Grand Dark. It's my first and only so far, what do you call it, second world books. It's an invented world. Sandman's 99% of my stuff is in New York, LA, Texas, real places. The Grand Dark takes place in Lower Prajava, a country I invented. Everybody's human. A lot of it's based on Weimar Germany, because I've always been fascinated with that period in history. After the First World War, before the Second World War, where everyone went a little mad because of the brutality of World War I had driven people insane. And this sense that it's not over, like there's something else coming. And so for those years between the wars, a lot of people wanted to get everything they could out of life. And it was when a lot of, I'm talking about like Germany, specifically Berlin, theater, art, queer culture, all these things emerged when they couldn't have emerged before. Dadaism was a direct response to World War I. And I wanted to use that in a fictional kind of, mostly fantasy, but also science fictional book. It walks that line for me, but it's more realistic than fantasy. There's no magic. It's just people dealing with their own weird technology that I invented. The Grand Dark itself is a theater called The Grand Dark, a very decadent theater that doesn't have actors. It has automaton doing the plays. There are actors in the background in these kind of, have you seen the motion capture suits?
Oh, yeah.
Actors wear movies, they kind of wear a very primitive sort of, 1920s version of that and control the automaton that way. The inspiration for that theater came from the brothers Quay, if you know who they are, a couple of American animators who moved to England and are do extraordinary work. If you can ever find a copy, there's a terrible copy on YouTube called The Street of Crocodiles, based on a Bruno Schulz story. Nothing else looks like them. Well, they've been ripped off enough, so there's a lot of stuff that looks like them now. But their stuff exists in this close to ours, broken down universe where everything is decaying, everything is broken, very influenced by Eastern European art, Polish and Czech art. And that influenced the theater, the grand art, and in fact infused the whole book with that feel and that look. And again, it's about a young man growing up, Largo Morton, who's a bicycle delivery kid, just a courier, who over the course of the book finds out he's been working for the secret police. The people he's been delivering to, basically they've been tracking his deliveries. And it's like certain people he's been delivering to, he realizes they're being killed. A pivotal moment in the book is early on when Largo thinks he's about to be fired because he was late to his job too many times. And in fact, the foreman pulls him aside, and that's when he thinks, well, it's over for me. I'm done, and I have no other skills other than riding a bicycle. So I'm screwed. But the foreman says, no, you're getting a promotion. He doesn't understand that at all. And they said, you're going to get more money. You're going to be doing different deliveries now to higher class people in better neighborhoods, so it won't be as dangerous. However, you're going to be delivering more important stuff. So with the promotion, you're going to get this too. And he presents him with a knife, a very impressive knife. So you're going to wear this under your coat from now on because you have a new job. You're going to have more money. You're also a target now. Welcome to your new life. And it's Largo. I don't want to go too much into the plot. It is about Largo growing up. It is about love. It is about war looming in the background. It is about anarchists. It's about people trying to stop the war who don't necessarily have the skills to do that kind of thing, but are desperate enough to try. And if you like primitive robots, if you like primitive genetic manipulation, if you like a lot of making out among the lead characters, you might like the book. It's a violent book, but not in a grotesque way, but it has the violence of desperation in that Weimar period. So that's one of my favorite books of mine. But, I had a sequel planned, book didn't sell. So the outline for the sequel is still sitting on a hard drive. I might self-publish it sometime. I like the world enough. And I never finished Largo's story. I never finished his lover's story, who by the end of the book has been infected by something that is actually genetically infected by something that is changing her in a way no one understands. And I want to tell her story. So I might have to, do a Kickstarter or something and just publish it myself because I want to tell the rest of that story. I feel less bad about Largo because he kind of had a nice arc there, but I really feel like I neglected. I feel like his lover was really neglected, and I want to give her story. So I've become more aware of that. Again, you talk about growing up as a writer. Sandman Slim has the classic guy thriller revenge story trick of fridging his girlfriend. It's something I didn't think about at the time because I was working from, classic revenge stories, books and movies where it's like the hero is completely motivated by someone murdering girlfriend, wife, whatever. So I fucking fridged her in the first book. And that's something I felt bad about. Once I realized what I'd done, I felt really lousy about it. So, even after she was dead, I kind of brought her back later. She had to come back, and I wanted to give her the agency I denied her in the early books. And in terms of fridging people, that's something I would never do again. If you're a younger writer, please don't do it. Not only will you get called out for it, you're going to write a lesser book. And it's really easy to do. It's a really easy trick, but it's sloppy and it's out of date. It's as bad, to me, it's right up there with the magical Negro trope. We never need to see that again. So I finished up Sandman Slim, 12 books. I knew I wanted to write these arcs. And when I started the first Sandman Slim book, I kind of had an idea of the ending. But when I started getting to those last two books, I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do. I was, in terms of Stark's arc toward the end of that series, I was grasping at straws. And it wasn't until I remembered all the way back to the first book. I thought all the way back to book 1 that I realized what book 12 was. And book 12 is a commentary on book 1. It's where Stark learns the true meaning of everything that happened to him, both in good and terrible ways. That he thought he understood the world through 11 books, and he reaches book 12 and he realizes, no, this whole time I didn't know what was going on. And so he has to come to terms with that and make up for his ignorance for the last 11 books. And I'm satisfied with where I got it. I mean, that's a hard thing to do, because 12 books, you have a lot of readers, a lot of fans, a lot of people who are invested in a character after that many books, and you have to stick the landing. And not everyone's going to love it, but you go with your instincts. I knew what was right, and I was happy to find out that most people thought I got there. And I have to thank my editors, and I have to thank Warren Zevon for getting me through that last book. And if you read King Bullet, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So after that, my next really big project was Dead Take the A Train. I wrote a lot of smaller stuff between those books, but Sandra Paul and I met. We were fans of each other's work. We met online after someone stole Cass's Kindle. We didn't know each other at the time, but I was just, don't steal someone's Kindle. Steal all their books. So I was just pissed off, and I was publicly angry about it. This all happened on Twitter. And through my being angry on Cass's behalf about the Kindle, we became friends. And after a while, we started talking, well, maybe we ought to try something together. And I had half an idea that at the time was called Demons, Insurance, Divorce. I still like that title. I'm going to use it for something.
You too.
And it was about Julie Cruz, who is a psychic operative in New York who's down on her luck. She is very good at her job, very brave, willing to take on anything. But she's having a real hard time. She's been screwed over by clients. She's been screwed over by ex-lovers. She's living hand to mouth, even though she's really good at her job, which is exorcisms, taking down monsters, fighting ghosts, all these things she's good at, and she can't quite make a living. Partly because her ex-lover, Tyler, who left her to go work for a big Wall Street firm, basically has been bad-mouthing her all over town, taking credit for a lot of her biggest accomplishments. And to make matters worse, because she can't get a lot of jobs, whenever Tyler is assigned a very dangerous job to exercise something, to kill a ghost, to kill a monster, he'll send it to Julie and say, look, you do this and I'll pay you. But of course, he's paying her a pittance. He's never paying her her real rate. And of course, in the end, he then takes credit for it. And he does this one too many times. And Julie flips out in public and tells everyone, you're a liar. I did this. Mess with me again, and it's over for you. Which is not going well for her. Tyler's a very powerful person in New York. And so she's really shot her mouth off in a way she probably shouldn't at that moment. Her friend Sarah has shown up at her doorstep by surprise, saying, hi, I'm just here to, I'm just going to surprise you. I'm in New York and I just thought I'd drop in and see what you're doing. Sarah has ulterior motives in coming to see Julie. Sarah has a very abusive boyfriend. And she knows, she's one of the few people who knows what Julie can do, that she has these powers. And she says, look, I don't want you to kill him, but can you make him disappear from the face of the earth? Do something to him where he will never, ever find me again. And Julie has to think about this. Because, she's not just gonna off this guy. She doesn't quite know what to do. But it's like, yeah, okay, we'll talk about this. And so Sarah moves in with Julie because it's like, well, you're my best friend. Come on and stay with me. They know each other since they were teenagers, and they kind of had a crush on each other all these years, but neither of them could admit it. And as they live together, things develop from that. And so Julie becomes very protective of Sarah. But she's still screwed. She does not have any money. She does not have any standing in the city. What Julie decides is she needs a guardian angel. Everybody has a guardian angel. She needs to find hers. So she goes looking for one. She goes to a magical bookstore that only a few people know about, gets a very obscure book, goes home, finds the spell, and does it. An angel appears and says, I've got you. You're taken care of. It's going to be fine now. And then people start dying horribly all over the place. What Julie didn't know is that the book is not the book she was looking for. The angel is not the angel that she was looking for. It's something else. It's something really horrible. And now that it's here, Julie has to take it down. And it's Julie's story of pursuing this thing that she brought into the world and trying to keep Sarah safe, because the creature wants to destroy everything that Julie cares about. And the world along the way too, of course. Because, that's kind of what giant cosmic monsters kind of want to do at some point in their lives. And so the Dead Take the A Train is the first part of Julie's story. The second part of Julie's story is going to come out in 2025, and that's called A Demon in the Bronx, which continues Julie's story, Sarah's story, and the story of a new creature, well, I should have said person, but it's a creature, who needs help and comes to them. And they need to help this thing. They recognize themselves in this helpless animal, creature, thing, person, thing, creature, stuff.
The not zombie.
Yes, the not zombie. And we're writing that at the moment. That'll be out in 2025. And collaborating on a novel is weird. I'll tell you that. I heard, Gaiman talk about writing Good Omens. And I think he described it something as, it was a really interesting experience that I never want to do again. Cass and I have to do it at least one more time. And it's a weird experience because when you're collaborating on a book, your first thought is, I'll write chapter 1, you write chapter 2, I'll write chapter 3. No, it does not work that way. We could not coordinate whatsoever. So we started writing bigger and bigger chunks. I'll write this whole section, you write this whole section. That still didn't work out. So basically, each of us wrote the book probably 3 times. Had to write full drafts, and the other one would go over it. And then our editors got a hold of it. And then we had to do another pass on it. So by the end of I think the book's 120,000 words around there. I think we wrote 300,000 words on one book, and we're probably going to do that again on the second. So I'm handling a lot of what's going on now, and we'll pass it on to Cass at some point and let them hack at it and take out all the dumb stuff I'm doing and put in better stuff and put in Cass's. I write very minimally. I can write elaborate prose if I want, but I can't write like Cass. Cass is a poet, and the way they write, I don't think you can copy it. So Cass is going to have to do the final pass on the book to get that voice that only Cass has. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm writing the book the way I would write a book, knowing that in the end, Cass is going to put that final shine on and make it really, really special. In a way, frankly, I can't on a book like this. So that's a really good point of collaboration, seeing each other's strengths, trusting each other. And the biggest thing I will say of all in collaboration, especially on a book, is no ego. Let go of your ego with a door, because the other person's going to change stuff. They're going to see things. They're going to see story things you missed. They're going to see character things you missed. Or they're going to get, well, you didn't miss it, but here's an more interesting twist on it. And you can't be precious about your words or your scenes. You have to trust that the other person has really good ideas too. And so you have to be willing to work together. And fortunately, Cass and I are pretty good at that. So I think, that first draft of the second book is not going to be fun. It's a complicated book, but it's a book I know we can write. That first pass is going to be the most painful. Well, I say the first pass, but when your editor sends it back to you 2 or 3 times, going, can you tighten this up? Reading your own book, writing 200,000 or 300,000 words on your own book, and then getting it back one more time, go through the whole book again. That's where it gets painful. So any time you publish a book, I don't know how many people here have published a book, it's not fun, because you write your book, you hand it to your editor, they hand you notes, you rewrite the book, you hand it back to them, they might give you more notes, you redo that. All this time you're reading your own book over and over and over again. So you've read your book 5 or 6 times before you're done, and you hate it.
Really 5 or 6.
You never want to see that book again. And your editor takes it and it's like, yep, this is fine. This is what we're going to publish. But then you get it back from the copy editor. And they start asking all the annoying questions. It's like, well, is this the grammar you want to go with here? Do you want to put in a semicolon here? I never want to put in semicolons. I hate semicolons. I do not. I actually flipped out on one of my books because one copy editor took it upon herself to take out all my periods and put in semicolons. And I just sent it back to my editor saying, this is my book. Fix it. I'm not touching this thing. And to their credit, they fixed it. I don't know where that copy editor went, but it wasn't near me again. So you have to trust people You have to trust your collaborator, you have to trust your editor, and then you have to trust yourself to get it through reading your own damn book. Once you've written it, once you've edited it, then you deal with the copy editor, and you think you're done now. No, you're not. Then you get basically the galleys, which is like, okay, here's what the book is going to be. Here's what we're going to publish. Read it one more time to see if there are any mistakes. That is the worst moment of your life. You hate this book so much. You hate the characters. You hate the story. You hate the prose. You want everyone to die, including yourself. And you drag yourself through this book one last time. And then you're finally done. And it goes away. And then it comes out a year later. And you just pretend that like, oh yeah, we wrote this book. We wrote it, we edited it, it was fine.
It was a wonderful experience.
It was a wonderful experience that I never want to do again. We're doing it a second time. It's fine. The second time through, it's much, much easier because we know what to do. But it's still weird. It's still a struggle to get to anticipate, to figure out on your own what you want to do, and then try to anticipate what your collaborator is going to do with it. Like, I want to leave good stuff for Cass to work with. As she left good stuff for me when I said she, I'm sorry, that was stupid of me. Cass is non-binary. I should have said they, and I apologize to everyone for that.
I'm gonna tell her. Real quick.
Well, then,
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I can't call that. Never mind.
Yeah, no, I'm embarrassed. I mean, we've known each other for so long. I still make mistakes. I hate that. I hate misgendering people, getting pronouns wrong. So I apologize to everyone for that. So we're working on the second book right now, and it's going as well as it could be. I mean, we figured out the book. I'm doing a lot of the first pass, and I'm gonna have that done. Supposed to have it done by the end of June. I'll probably have it done by the end of July. And I have 3 other books in the works at the same time. So it's like no pressure. I have the sequel to The Pale House Devil that I've written already. So that's fine. It's off at the publisher. I'm just waiting for edits. I'm pretty confident. It's like, I think it's a tight book. So whatever I get back from my publisher, I'm not anticipating ripping it apart. I'm pretty sure that one's going to be okay. So it's not going to be an ordeal getting done, which is cross my fingers, will be a relief. But I liked writing the second book. It's called The Flesh King. And that's another book where there was a minor character in the first book that carries on into the second book. And that was another instance in which I was able to give a fun minor character in the first book agency in the second book. And in fact, in some ways, she kind of takes over at points, and I really liked that. You had a question?
I don't have a question, but we have the second part of the meeting that we were looking at. I don't know if you were still planning to try to read something.
You want to just go to questions or something like that?
A little bit after too.
Okay,
And we were going to be working on the panel topics and stuff like that. And
I'm done if you want.
Well, let's take a couple of questions. We'll keep it about 5 minutes.
And then we'll do a little quick break so that everybody can get up and stretch and grab knot and.
Great.
Does anybody have a question? There you go.
Yeah,
You mentioned at the beginning of your talk that I think it was your first story you sold the Interzone. You hated.
hate it.
Why did you hate it?
It's my most obvious pastiche. And I really loathe it at this point because I can see it. I I can't look at it without going, yeah, I know exactly who I ripped off for this story. And I'm happy it got published because it was my first story. I got $20 whole for it. But I never want to see it again. I know how it is for a young writer. It's for any young artist, right? Painters start copying better painters. Guitarists sit down at home, they play songs over and over and over again and copy the licks. That's how you learn to play. That's how you learn to paint. That's how you learn to write. I did it too long and I sold that story. I should have abandoned that technique that I was using before I wrote that story. But I learned enough to be embarrassed by that story that I learned to never do that again. And that's the funny part about publishing early stuff. Lou Reed talking about his career from the Velvet Underground on, but some of his work is good, some of his work isn't so good. And he used the phrase growing up in public, where all your stuff is out there for people to get a hold of, and all your stuff is out there for people to hate if they want. And that's how it can be for a writer if you have a long career, that you're growing up in public and stuff you don't want out in the world is still out in the world. And all you can do is shrug and go, yeah, I tried to do better after that. So anything else? Anybody else?
You mentioned self-publishing. How do you do it?
I don't know. A friend of mine did a Kickstarter for her book. It went very well. So when I decide that I want to republish Kamikaze L'Amour on my own, I am going to her and fall on my knees and tell me, how do I do this? I have my biggest concern right now. I mean, the book was published. It's already edited. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is the cover, because you can tell so many self-published books.
Yep.
Oh, boy. Because they have the worst covers and the worst layout, the worst typeface,
Overall design.
overall design. And I'm really concerned about that right now. I know really good artists and I know people who are old school in terms of design and stuff like that. So I'm not worried about it. I just have to find all the bits and pieces to put together, because I'm not going to have a self-published book that looks like a self-published book. I'm just not going to do it. I have enough of an ego not to do something that I consider second rate. It's going to be good or it's not going to happen.
I've been using Kindle for self-publishing recently. Kindle, the Kindle publishers, the publish.
Yeah, I'm not going to do Kindle.
Never do it.
I mean, it'll end up on Kindle at some point because we're going to do ebooks from it too. But I don't want to be tied to Amazon. I want to publish the book. I want there to be print. I want there to be, I want it to be able to be on Kindle. I want it to be able to be on Barnes and Noble system. I want it to be able to be on, Kobe. I want people to be able to get to the book. And so I don't want it just to be locked into Kindle. Kindle's great. I have a ton of their books, but I want to do this in a way where the most people can get a hold of it. So we're going to do the whole thing ourselves.
Does anyone on Zoom have a question for us? We have time for like one question. Either type it into chat, or there's a lot of you, so it's hard to see you raise your hands, but just unmute and say something maybe if you have a question from the Zoom audience.
I think usually if they raise their hand, they pop to the top of the list.
Yeah, nobody's popping. Okay.
All right.
Thank you much. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.